As the movie opens, the relentless advance of the hostile Huns cast a long shadow of war and displacement across medieval Europe. Amidst this chaos, the proud kingdom of Burgundy fought desperately for survival. To defend his realm, King Dankrat ventured to the border to meet the invaders. However, a meticulously planned ambush plunged the entire kingdom into profound sorrow. The icy, snow-covered landscape, a silent witness to countless raids and deaths, became the scene of a tragedy. Burgundy's sleeping soldiers were silently slaughtered in their camp. Ravens circled high above the corpses, a cruel and simple law of the land. In the ensuing mayhem, a cold arrow struck and felled King Dankrat. His sons could only watch in despair and grief as their father's life faded away in the wind and snow. Hagen, the kingdom's marshal, was consumed with guilt for failing to save the king in time. Raised by Dankrat, he had sworn an unbreakable oath to protect the royal family at all costs. With the king's death, the eldest son, Gunther, inherited the throne. But the crown was a burden too heavy for the timid new king. He knew the kingdom was beset by internal strife and external threats, with enemies perpetually lurking, ready to strike at their weakest moment. Finding allies became his most urgent priority. After extensive deliberation with his ministers, Gunther made a painful decision. He would marry his beautiful sister, Princess Kriemhild, to Alboin, king of the Eastern Lombard Kingdom. This was a classic political marriage, a trade of the princess's happiness for the kingdom's peace. For Kriemhild, who had been raised with great care and affection, this decision felt like a bolt from the blue. She had no memory of the Lombard king, having met him only once in childhood, and certainly held no affection for him. Yet, her strong sense of royal duty left her unable to resist. She understood that her father had always aimed to establish an alliance with the East, and this marriage was likely a decision he would have approved of as well. Just as the kingdom began preparing for the union, a group of unexpected visitors arrived at the capital. 11 fully armed knights, bearing no flags or emblems, rode into the city. The man leading them was both mysterious and undeniably powerful: Siegfried, the son of King Siegmund. Disregarding Burgundy's customs, Siegfried arrogantly challenged King Gunther to a duel, wagering their crowns as the stakes. Although timid, Gunther did not lose the dignity of a king. At that moment, Hagen stepped forward with a determined look. King Gunther then informed Siegfried that in Burgundy, no one fights alone. Struck by the united spirit of the Burgundians, Siegfried abandoned his challenge. He accepted Gunther's hospitality and stayed as a guest for the time being. However, his arrival caused immediate ripples throughout the kingdom. Princess Kriemhild was wary of the mysterious guests, especially the dwarf Alberic who accompanied Siegfried. She believed he was no ordinary servant, but a dark creature from an ancient world, one capable of entering people's dreams. Hagen, the kingdom's most loyal guardian, harbored his own mysterious past. The scars on his face hinted at an unknown ordeal. It was rumored that he had once survived in a place destroyed by a dragon, an experience that had taken everything from him, including his fear. This past made him highly vigilant against all supernatural forces. Hagen sought out Siegfried and warned him to control his servant and leave as soon as possible. The first confrontation between these two equally powerful men, one as bright as fire, the other as calm as ice, was fraught with tension. Soon, Hagen's concerns were confirmed. Alberic's presence drove the horses in the stable mad, causing Kriemhild's beloved horse to panic. Despite the danger, the princess insisted on calming the frightened animal herself. At this critical moment, Hagen intervened, stopping the princess from approaching the panicked horse. Hagen then followed Kriemhild to the stream, watching as she slowly approached her now calmed white horse. He was utterly captivated by her beauty and innocence, and in that silent moment, the wheels of fate began to turn. At the court banquet, Siegfried captivated the attendees by speaking of a mysterious land he had visited, Iceland. He spoke of its powerful queen, the Valkyrie Brunhild, who possessed the ability to cast spells and summon men to her side from thousands of miles away, capable of enchanting someone she had never even seen. Later, Siegfried subtly steered the conversation toward King Gunther's beautiful sister. Immediately following the banquet, Siegfried impulsively burst into Princess Kriemhild's room and boldly expressed his admiration. At this moment, the princess's heart was troubled, her sense of peace disrupted. Meanwhile, Hagen sought out King Gunther, arguing for the immediate cancellation of the engagement to King Alboin. He asserted that Burgundy's army was strong enough to stand on its own, rendering the alliance unnecessary. Convinced by his marshal, Gunther canceled the engagement. The peaceful days did not last. The Saxons and Danes suddenly betrayed their alliance with Burgundy, advancing with a large army and plunging the kingdom into crisis once again. Facing powerful enemies, Burgundy stood alone. It was then that Siegfried approached King Gunther, offering his aid. Gunther accepted, proudly announcing that the hero of Xanten would fight alongside them. However, Siegfried's dwarf companion, Alberich, warned Hagen that Siegfried should be driven away immediately. Alberich then revealed Siegfried's secret. The hero had once killed a dragon in the Nibelung Valley and bathed in its blood, making his body invulnerable to swords and spears. His only weakness was a small spot on his back, covered by a leaf. Alberich, who had been the dragon's servant, now followed Siegfried, who wielded the divine sword Balmung, forged from the dragon's bones. Inspired by the legend, the soldiers roared with renewed spirit, shouting the names of Burgundy and Siegfried. Kriemhild, meanwhile, confronted Hagen. She demanded to know why he had changed the king's mind, effectively forcing her to remain in Burgundy. Hagen looked at her with a helpless expression, understanding that as a servant some feelings could never be expressed. With everything prepared, Hagen and Siegfried set out. Hagen devised a meticulous battle plan, intending to use the terrain to allow their disciplined army to counter the disorganized enemy forces. Siegfried, however, was consumed by a restless desire for battle. The war began. Siegfried fought like an invincible force. Disobeying Hagen's command, he broke away from the team, slew the Saxon king, and threw the enemy's head before the Burgundian troops. His bravery inspired everyone, yet it completely disrupted Hagen's plan, causing the soldiers to blindly follow Siegfried's rash charge. During the battle, King Gunther found himself in grave danger, and it was Hagen who saved him. Though they won the battle, the cost was heavy. After the fighting, all the glory was attributed to Siegfried. The soldiers shouted his name. His renown completely overshadowed King Gunther. This spectacle planted the first seed of jealousy in the king's heart. Hagen was severely wounded in the battle and on the verge of death. Kriemhild found Siegfried, who was celebrating their victory, and was about to leave when Siegfried offered to help, stating that Alberich could save Hagen. While Alberich cast the spell to heal him, Hagen learned the truth about his life. It was not a dragon, but human warfare that had destroyed his homeland. The so-called dragon was actually the last great ancient one who had rescued the young Hagen from the Sea of Fire. This truth shattered Hagen's long-held beliefs. Siegfried came to Hagen's side. Hagen thanked him for saving his life, but asked him not to share his personal matters with Alberich in the future. Siegfried responded that it was Kriemhild who had asked Alberich for help. Kriemhild then approached, telling Hagen that the people of Burgundy were immensely grateful. However, she noted that because Siegfried had killed 2 leaders and saved Hagen, everyone credited Siegfried with the victory. The whole city was cheering for him. Hagen stood on the city wall and watched as Kriemhild and Siegfried left together. Siegfried took the princess deep into the forest, where he finally revealed the full story of the dragon slaying. He confessed that it wasn't a heroic feat, but a crime committed in desperation for survival. That moment, he told her, had become the most beautiful and painful memory of his life. Kriemhild was deeply moved by Siegfried's honesty. Soon after the battle, King Gunther received alarming news. The Huns, led by Etzel, had conquered the Lombards. Furthermore, many Burgundian scouts had been killed or injured, signaling a direct and growing threat to the kingdom. Recognizing the immediate need for a powerful ally, Yerno found Hagen and informed him of the situation, also mentioning that he had imprisoned Alberich to prevent any sabotage of their plans. Hagen went to Alberich's cell, where the dwarf revealed a key piece of information about the Valkyrie Brunhild. Alberich recounted how, after slaying the dragon, Siegfried had traveled to Iceland, fallen in love with Brunhild, and lived with her for a year. Cruelly, he had later left without a word, deeply hurting the powerful queen. Meanwhile, Kriemhild spoke to Hagen about her relationship with Siegfried, hoping for his support. She knew Hagen was her brother Gunther's most trusted advisor. Acting on Kriemhild's wishes, Hagen conveyed to Gunther that Siegfried intended to propose to the princess. At the subsequent banquet, King Gunther agreed to Siegfried's proposal, but with a crucial condition. Siegfried must accompany him to Iceland and help him marry the Valkyrie Brunhild. Gunther declared that an alliance with Iceland would bring Burgundy unprecedented power, enough to deter the increasingly threatening Huns. To marry Kriemhild, Siegfried had no choice but to agree. A group boarded a large ship and set sail across the turbulent North Sea. Along the way, they were struck by a colossal storm. Their ship was destroyed, and only Gunther, Hagen, Siegfried, and a few others survived. Siegfried led the survivors through the thick fog, instructing them to put down their weapons. Suddenly, a woman emerged from the mist, and it was immediately clear that she and Siegfried knew each other. Brunhild had been expecting him. Gunther curiously observed the strange surroundings, but before long he and his men were beaten back by the locals. Any man who wished to propose to Queen Brunhild had to defeat her in a duel, or he would face certain death. Her palace was ominously decorated with the skulls of failed challengers. Despite the peril, Gunther was instantly and deeply fascinated by Brunhild. He was convinced she was the queen destined for him and was determined to fight for her, even if it cost him his life. Gunther and Hagen found Siegfried, who was looking conflicted. Hagen knew Gunther could not possibly defeat Brunhild on his own, but the king refused to leave. Siegfried was also in a dilemma, forced to keep his promise to Gunther and secure the Valkyrie's hand. To help Gunther win the duel, Alberich used magic to mix the blood of the three men, Gunther, Hagen, and Siegfried, and made Gunther drink it. The duel was incredibly fierce. With the combined strength of Hagen and Siegfried running through his veins, Gunther fought his hardest against the extraordinary Brunhild. At a critical moment, Brunhild seemed to see Siegfried's shadow in Gunther's eyes. In the end, Gunther, secretly aided by the blood enchantment, won the victory with great difficulty, and a few drops of Brunhild's blood marked the snow. According to the agreement, Brunhild and her warriors followed Gunther back to Burgundy, though the Valkyrie's heart was clearly complicated. They returned to a kingdom in crisis. The Huns' offensive was intensifying, border villages were being plundered, and the people's morale was nearing collapse. Gunther wanted Brunhild to be a traditional queen, hidden deep within the palace. However, Hagen reminded him that the Icelanders only obeyed Brunhild's orders. Siegfried then warned the king that if Brunhild were allowed on the battlefield, Gunther would lose all control over her. Soon after, Brunhild crowned herself queen, then immediately donned her armor, ready for war. At the pre-war rally, Hagen passionately introduced the Daughter of the Gods, declaring that with the powerful ancient Brunhild leading them, they would be invincible. Hagen's words soared, inspiring massive morale. Brunhild lived up to the hype. She led the army to a brilliant victory, completely driving the Huns out of Burgundy's borders. At the triumphant bonfire celebration, Hagen kept a close, watchful eye on both Brunhild and Siegfried. With peace finally restored, Hagen reminded Siegfried to honor his promise to Kriemhild and remain loyal to his future wife. Siegfried and Kriemhild were married, and the hero stayed in the palace while his followers departed Burgundy. However, the couple's life was not peaceful. At a court gathering, a farmer requested aid for his Hun-ravaged farm, but King Gunther refused the request. Siegfried openly challenged the king's authority over the matter, thoroughly infuriating Gunther. The king ordered Siegfried to stand down, creating a highly embarrassing public scene. What was even more unbearable for Gunther was Brunhild's palpable indifference to him and the complex look in her eyes when she gazed at Siegfried. The serpent of jealousy began to devour the king's heart. The conflict erupted publicly at a banquet. Siegfried mocked Gunther's brother Gernot for his disabled hand. Gunther retaliated, stating that Siegfried was merely his vassal. Siegfried arrogantly responded that he could do everything Gunther could not. Confused and provoked, Gunther questioned Hagen, his marshal who had sworn allegiance to his father, asking, "Who are you loyal to now?" Driven by suspicion, Gunther followed Brunhild and discovered her meeting Siegfried outside the city late one night. Hagen watched the king's pain. He realized that Siegfried's continued presence threatened the stability of the kingdom and the royal family he had sworn to protect with his life. The people openly respected Siegfried and treated him like a role model, overshadowing the king. A terrible idea formed in Hagen's mind. For the future of Burgundy, Siegfried must be eliminated. That night, Hagen found a drunken Siegfried. Siegfried, looking at his companion, swore that he would never betray Kriemhild. Hagen then lured Siegfried deep into the forest under the pretense of a hunt. At the river's edge, Hagen raised his sword from behind, but looking at the stag antlers before him, he seemed to recall his past, and he did not strike. The two men drew their swords and began attacking each other. In that fierce duel, a long spear suddenly pierced Siegfried's back. It was King Gunther who struck the fatal blow. Hagen ordered Gunther to ride away immediately, warning him not to tell anyone he had been there. Hagen brought Siegfried's body back to the castle, falsely claiming he had killed him in a fair duel. A heartbroken Kriemhild confronted Hagen. He told her that his warriors would kill him if she commanded it, but Kriemhild chose not to give the order, instead sentencing Hagen to a crueler fate. He would live as the king's loyal servant, watching Siegfried's children grow up, forever existing in the shadow of his own betrayal. So, what did you think of the movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you in the next video.